Welcome to the JEMS Report, brought to you by Clearing Events Fire and Rescue Group and the Journal of Emergency Medical Services. I'm Ted Lee. I'm the editor-in-chief of JEMS, and along with Jeff Frankel, the managing editor of JEMS, we'll be bringing you hot topics and news through interviews with contributors for the magazine and facing hot topics for the future of EMS. Today's special guest is Chief Bruce Evans, a contributor to JEMS historically, and we want to welcome you and thank you for your time today.
Well, thanks, Ted, for having me, and thanks to JEMS for having me. It's been a very lengthy history of my relationship with JEMS, all the way back to when Jim Page founded the magazine out of Solona Beach.
Yeah. Well, we have a large audience that remembers Mr. Page and kind of the foundation. I remember growing up in my EMS career with JEMS magazines everywhere. But in the new age and all the up-and-comers that are just being introduced to JEMS, this is kind of new for them. So why don't you give us a little bit of a history of yourself, your background, where you're coming from, and what you've done in your EMS career.
Right. So I'd like to say this is a part of the family business. So my folks were in EMS. My stepfather was Air National Guard medic and founded our service in Iowa, West Des Moines EMS, which I'm proud to say that is an A-game organization now. My mom was an EMT intermediate. I've run calls with my mom, and so I started out, went to college at Iowa State, did my EMT training at Mary Greeley, did my paramedic training at Mary Greeley, flew with Life Flight Des Moines for a couple years. And then when I became a paramedic, somehow I wandered out to Las Vegas, where I worked for Mercy Ambulance for several years. I became the recruiter there. It was not hard to sell people to come to Las Vegas to be paramedics and get to run emergent up and down the Las Vegas Strip.
Yeah, exciting.
And then I wound up being recruited out to the Henderson Fire Department. They were starting their paramedic program out there, and spent about 17 years out there. Worked my way up as a firefighter paramedic. Was a EMS captain for a few years, and then a fire station captain, an engine company captain, and then jumped over to North Las Vegas to be the EMS chief, and then finished out my career in Nevada as the deputy chief or assistant chief at North Las Vegas Fire. Thought I was going to retire and come and fish and chase trains up here in Southwest Colorado. And when I got up here, I wound up falling into a fire chief position here at the Upper Pine River Fire Protection District. It's a little slice of heaven. Got the Weminuche Wilderness on the north end of the district, a section of US 160, just absolutely stunning and beautiful terrain to be providing EMS in. A little different going from urban EMS to super rural EMS, but I love it, and been part of the National Association of EMTs for, actually I was joking with somebody this morning that been an NEMT for 18 years. And had done other things, been part of the National EMS Management Association, IFF, and the International Association of Fire Chiefs EMS section. So I like to say that I've walked a mile in just about everybody's shoes, including the educators, and always felt it was part of my duty to write for JEMS and make sure that, we're contributing to the profession.
Outstanding. Thank you for that history lesson. And yes, you've been around for sure. So you have a new article that was just published in JEMS about a week ago, and it's part one of a three-part series on a broad topic of leadership. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the articles that you have, and kind of where they're coming from, and what you're hoping to accomplish with them.
Yeah, so it's a three-part series, and it's on leadership, but the focus is mentoring. And I just have to go back to the Wayback Machine real quick. And, so I was very fortunate to be mentored by Jim Page. And I would tell you that there were numerous conversations with Jim that many of us had, Keith Griffiths, Gary Ludwig, John Sinclair, Doug Wolfberg, Steve Worth. um, around and Baxter Larman around Jim's vision of a national EMS mentoring program. And some people may not know that, when Jim was at one of the agencies he was at, there were people that were jealous of him because of his role as as an advisor to a television series. And what he started to rationalize with is that as he looked around and saw that there was not a lot of leaders in EMS coming up the ranks, like I would tell you today, if you were to ask a group of EMT students or a group of paramedic students who the national leaders are in this country for EMS, say name 10 of them, they would struggle. They might get three,
Yeah.
but I doubt they would get 10. So knowing that there was a vacuum there, Jim had articulated this vision of this national mentoring program that would pair up really experienced EMS leaders with leaders that wanted to be leaders. And maybe Jim was very attuned to the issue of a lot of these folks that were in their organizations were not, their frontline supervisors weren't in a position to mentor them, either because they feared that this person would take their job, or they may not have liked them, or they just felt that, you're here to answer ambulance calls. You're not here to be trained as a leader. Now, and unfortunately, Jim passed away before he was able to to see that vision come to realization. And there were many of us, myself, Baxter Larman, Steve Worth, that routinely, when we would get together in an EMS conference at EMS Today, and we'd talk about, okay, we're going to move forward on Jim's vision, and then we'd leave the meeting and nothing would happen. And this went on for over a decade, and finally, I said to myself that this is a reason to run for the NEMT presidency, is to put the horsepower of NEMT behind Jim's vision. Surprisingly, Jim did our first keynote when NEMT was formed, and we had our first national convention. And if you go to the UCLA special collections section where Jim's writings are archived, you will find that speech there, handwritten. And I would tell you that it was a heavy lift. And I convened a committee of people that I thought were national EMS leaders, that were doers, people like Baxter and Steve and David Edgar and McCara Trusty. And they got it done. They created this 18-month program. We graduated our first group of EMS mentors this fall. And the feedback that came from those people was phenomenal. And, just when you kind of wondering what the next generation is going to bring us, and, whether they're as committed to doing what the greatest generation's done or the baby boomers have done, you get surprised. And I was quite surprised at not only the level of enthusiasm of the mentees, but how much it recharged the batteries of the mentors.
Right.
So this is a real synergistic program, but mentoring is not to be taken lightly. I think there's a lot of folks that try to think that they might be mentors. This is a formal program that really outlines things that we're trying to do for people. Like, for example, make them set goals, and for that mentor to open some doors for them in a networking fashion. And then the series of articles talks kind of about 3 stages of the mentoring. And again, we pick up at in the numbering of these articles, kind of, not 1, 2, 3. It's not mentoring 1, 2, 3, because mentoring is not, first step, second step, third step.
Right.
It's, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8 steps. It's for people that are established. And we talk about in this series of articles about how to establish yourself and what the mentoring relationship should be. And then there's even a piece of this series that talks about, are you ready to be a mentor? There's a lot of people that want to get the t-shirt,
Right.
but they're not really mentors. They don't have the
Yeah.
time. They're not ready for it. They won't make the commitment, because this really is about a relationship.
Mhm.
And it really is. And that relationship, like all relationships, has to be worked on. You can't take it for granted, and you can't just assume that it's going to be there. It requires communication. It requires real dialogue. And, it requires a genuine interest by the mentor in the mentee. And we talk about that in this series of articles about, again, what's mentoring all about? What are the components of it? What's a good mentee? What's a good mentor? What are the things that are required to jump on that? And I think in the future, you always say that, you know, people that are, imitating you is the highest form of flattery. And it's interesting to see many other organizations now want to do mentoring.
Right.
And then I would also tell you, I think that there's a group of people out there that are hungry for this. As we had more applicants for our mentoring program than we had mentors that we felt comfortable putting them with. And we didn't want anybody to have a bad experience or, people to be left behind or people to, walk out of the program saying, oh, well, I had a mentor, but I really didn't do anything with it. So, NEMT has done a lot of analysis on the workforce, as many organizations have, looking at, this apparent, shortage of paramedics and EMTs in the field. And I would tell you that what we found is kind of two things. One is they've switched it around now and calling it life-work balance. It's not work-life balance anymore, right?
Right.
And then what we also found is that people want to feel that when they come to work, that it's meaningful and that they're doing something that makes a difference. And because they have a lot of other things that they have access to now that they could go be doing. They could go, read poetry somewhere. They could be playing golf. They could be riding motocross. And, so if you're going to occupy their time, they want to make sure that they feel that there's something that it's meaningful, that it's making a difference. And a lot of the, when they get into these mentoring programs, they want the mentor to be able to make a difference for them if they're going to commit the time, because it is a huge time commitment. And it has to be scheduled and regular. And we talk about that in the article in the series and about, making time, that, you turn off your phone and you do away with any kind of distractions that may pull you away from, an hour's worth of, in-depth or intense conversation between a mentor and a mentee.
Right. Yeah, and it's very interesting. You mentioned that people are looking for, and maybe came into the profession and they weren't prepared for what they were walking into, or are not prepared to be the next generation to step into leadership roles or mentoring roles. I mean, it's the same thing with. I mean, my background is education. The same thing for educators as well. People think they have an understanding and be like, oh, well, this is what an educator is, or this is what a leader is, or this is what a mentor is, and then not really fully flesh out and understand kind of what it takes to be in those roles and what kind of impacts that they have for the individuals that they come in contact with as an educator, a leader, or a mentor, or even a mentee. Because I would imagine, through my career, it's just as frustrating if somebody's mentoring you that they're not really mentoring you, to be a mentor and have a mentee not really engaging or not really, acting like they even want to be there or want to hear anything that you're trying to help them with. So it is very much a balancing act on both parts.
Right. And and this is kind of for people that are a little more advanced in their career, want to be more advanced in their career. This is not, mentoring is not about preceptorship or
Right.
mentoring is not about orientation of a new employee. This is trying to help people reach a more lofty professional goal. And there are a lot of agencies that get precepting or field training, crossed with mentoring. And it's not to say your field training officer can't be your mentor in the future, but they're evaluating for the clinical competency of your medicine and your ability to maintain in an EMS system. So a whole different approach to these things, and sometimes your preceptor has to be the one to say, "Sorry, you didn't make it." As compared to a mentor is more of a, more of almost a family relationship. Where
Right.
gonna be some tough love, but there's you're not going to be abandoned or you're not going to be failed. And that's a whole different ball of wax. So,
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's really important about this incoming generation, and as I, look to, informally mentor some of my employees here, and I do have an employee um, that's in the second group of mentees for the James O. Page Lighthouse Leadership Program, which is NAMT's mentoring program. And there's lots of other opportunities to have. You mentioned education, so we're sponsoring 8 of our folks through the NEMC Instructor Level 1 course. And there's a lot of folks here that are like, oh, well, why do we have to take this national course and this national test? And I'm like, it's part of your professional development. It's going to open some doors for you. Maybe you go to the NEMC conference in Pittsburgh this year and you find out how to teach better. So we're opening some doors for people that way. And sometimes that's the first step, is to push people to challenge their barriers. Yes, most of my folks all have Fire Instructor 1, which in the state of Colorado allows them to do EMT training. But let's take you to the next level with Instructor 1 course from NEMC or from NEMC. And those are ways, trying to push people out of their comfort zone. And it's interesting. I've been going on doing this now for about 40 years, and nobody ever really comes back to you and says, wow, I really like the way you ran that second alarm fire or that MCI. But I will tell you that people are grateful for when you helped them get to their professional goals, more so than the day-to-day operations that you do. If you take an interest in somebody and you open a door for them, and I can't tell you how many people I've kicked in the pants to go to medical school that were paramedics. That there's one guy who's an interventional radiologist in Las Vegas now, who was on the department with me in Henderson Fire. And I would tell that guy every day I saw him, I said, the cure for cancer is in your head. You have to go to medical school. You're wasting your time here as a paramedic. And an exceptional interventional radiologist. I'm doing great things. And again, doesn't forget where his roots are, because he still provides, continuing education stuff, or, case reviews for the paramedics on stuff that he winds up fixing, putting coils in people's heads and, removing, blood clots with a basket. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, and really for the mentor-mentee relationship, a lot of these kids are coming in and, their goal to make it through EMT class or to become a firefighter or make it through paramedic class. A lot of times that is their goal, their short-term goal, but they don't have anything past that. They don't know what it means to turn, emergency medical services into a career, and where that career can take you. Sometimes they only experience, what a family member experienced or what their local community has, and had no idea that, there was a wide range of things that were open to them if they were willing to step through that door.
That's a great point, Ted. Is that one of the things that Baxter Alarming did with his mentee, really pushed him to apply to speak at a national conference. And he got accepted to speak at a national conference, and he didn't think that was really in his wheelhouse, that he wasn't capable of doing that. But Baxter mentored him to the point where his submission was very successful. I think it kind of goes the same way. I've got what I would consider just an exceptional star paramedic student, and she's gifted because she can just talk to anybody. But the other day, and she's got it written up. I just need to proofread it and send it off to you for publication.
Of course.
And it was a case where a guy had tripped coming out of a bleacher at a basketball gymnasium, watching his granddaughter play basketball, and he fell and struck his head on the basketball court floor. When we got there, fortunately, there were some Forest Service people that had attended to him. He hadn't moved, a little bit of a lack on the back of his head, but he said his neck hurt. So we went ahead and put him in. We use a vacuum mattress here instead of backboard, log rolled him and very gently into a vacuum mattress, mobilized him. We run a 2-tiered system here where it's a chase vehicle. supporting EMT trucks. And I would happen to be the paramedic that day, covering for somebody that wanted to ski for the day. And so I was getting ready to leave him with this guy, and the EMT said, well, let me run an EKG on him, make sure he's not an atrial fib or there wasn't an arrhythmia that caused him to fall. So I waited and everything cleared, and they said, yeah, we're good with taking him in. Get a call from the trauma coordinator a little bit later. He had an odontoid fracture, an unstable, C2 fracture. Had we hit a bump on the way in, or had we done like probably a lot of other paramedics that normalized deviance and set him up and said, how do you feel?
Right.
We paralyzed him and
Yeah.
potentially killed him. But the crew did exactly like they were supposed to. They assessed him, they properly immobilized him. We didn't move him, and he had to be flown from here in Durango up to Colorado Springs, where he got special surgery to pin that odontoid. And I called him about a month later. He was at Costco shopping. So
Perfect. Great outcome.
yeah, and how many of us have seen a living odontoid fracture? Not
Right.
many.
Yeah.
That's a pretty rare situation. And I went back to the crew and I told him, I said, you don't realize, how, I know that it just seemed like you were doing basic C-spine, but this really made a huge difference in this guy's outcome. He would have been paralyzed. And I said, you really need to write it up. And again, this girl who's going through paramedic school, I think is going to be a shining star in the future. I said, look, write this up and let's submit it into JEMS. And you write it up. And I said, I'll proofread it and then I'll give it to the editor, and they can help you with everything. So I think, mentoring doesn't need to go just beyond, or, just be in the realm of, getting somebody doors open, getting them in leadership positions. But part of that leadership position, like we said early on in the introduction of this, is submitting stuff into the journals.
Right.
And there's a lot of great stories out there about what people are doing and some great outcomes, and that stuff needs to be put into JEMS and submitted to you and Jeff. And I think that's just part of mentoring. You should, every EMT or paramedic, once in their career, they should submit something, a case study or an article into the trade magazines.
Yeah, and that's something that, our generation, it was always something that you tried to elevate to. If you were able to do that, it was a huge deal, and we really looked at that as quite the accomplishment. Nowadays, things are a little bit different. They have their own, TikTok channels or YouTube channels, and they're self-publishing, and that's great because that opens up opportunities for them. But to have something in a trade journal where your peers are looking at it and you're recognized, as kind of elevating to that next level, like you mentioned, speaking at our national conferences, those are really, kind of, the feather in the cap of I'm starting to make a difference. It's not that what they do out in the field every day is not amazing work, but it is that next level. It is that next step forward, to turn for some what is a job into, okay, this is my career. This is, how I'm defining, what I do for a living. So.
And and I think I look on my wall here in my office and I see a couple JEMS articles that I had framed. And one, writing becomes like infectious. You want to, once you write a couple articles, you'll do that, but you'll write more. And the other thing about submitting an article into JEMS versus self-publishing, or putting it on your YouTube or your Facebook page, part of the role, and we talk about this in the series, is to establish a network. And your mentor should help you kind of establish that professional network. And by certainly submitting an article in where you or Jeff can take a look at it, and you start to know these people, then you become part of their network. So when EMS today rolls around and they need somebody to speak on spinal injuries, then our gal's got an article, you remember, got published, and you drop her a line and say, hey, can you come and speak at EMS today on this case and talk about spinal trauma in general? So not only is publishing just important for your professional development, but it's absolutely critical on your networking ability. And I've known JEMS editors over 40 years, as I said, and everybody, from AJ to Jim to Keith and Jeff Barron and, all the people that came before you. And I'm still really good friends with most of those folks. Like I said, I just spent the holidays with Keith Griffiths from the Red Flash group now. And, those are lifelong friendships that get developed that, if I needed something or, I needed an opinion on something or I needed a door open here or a door open there. These are all people that are part of your network that come from, essentially the magazine.
Yeah. So, just last question kind of that I have that I'd be interested on your take. And, you mentioned that everybody's looking at, recruitment and retention and, the potential shortages that we have, especially in rural America, trying to find paramedics and keep ambulances staffed. How do you think mentoring impacts that, or what's the future look like, now that you have the James Page Lighthouse Leadership Program and you're actively trying to develop the mentoring kind of philosophy and groundwork for this?
So, I'm a super rural agency. I cover 282 square miles with 14,000 people in it, with 8 people a day. And so I have a full-time staff of about 32 people here. And I would tell you, I'm not having trouble with people. Matter of fact, as I said, I've been at it long enough, and I have retirement from the state of Nevada, and I don't really need to be here.
Right.
I joke with some of my staff that one bad day and I'm going to be on the beach with an umbrella drink, or going and having Baxter finally teach me how to surf. But the thing about it is that it goes back to that issue of when you see that people leave an organization, or if you're having trouble recruiting people and retaining them, a lot of it goes back to the management. And I would tell you the reason. So I have some real superstars here, and frankly, I'm still here because of them. And they're hungry, and it's a challenge to feed them, and they're a bunch of tigers. They have to have a steak every day, and that requires not only me mentoring them. So, for example, doing the National Fire Academy's ICS for EMS class here for our captains, and me doing that myself as one of the authors of that curriculum. And same thing with putting our people into the Lighthouse Leadership Program, or sending some of our captains off to the accreditation conference, and then pushing some of our firefighter EMTs to to be teaching the EMT classes that we offer. And I would tell you that I have more people wanting to go to paramedic school than I can afford to send them. And so it's a challenge to retain them, because somebody else would be happy to send them to paramedic school. But we do a pretty robust employee development stuff here. And I would tell you that I'm probably one, even though I'm super rural and we have a very limited budget, we provide tuition reimbursement. And that's a big deal. None of the other agencies in the region provide tuition reimbursement. So I have people going to school for nursing. I have people that are looking at PA school and trying to get the bachelor's degree in paramedicine, and looking to be community paramedics. And so we're very fortunate too that we're the recipient of our third Siren Act grant, or SAMHSA grant, $200,000 to do EMT training for a year and provide equipment for all that. So, and then we got a workforce development grant from the state of Colorado. So as an agency here, we've been offering, we'll be offering free EMT training. We have for the last year, and for 3 more years. So La Plata County is about 60,000 people. We have 2 sections of EMT class that just started last week. We got 28 students. So,
That's great.
And we're competing with the community college here, so which
Right.
has to do. So when they said their bodies they're not, people to put in seats of an ambulance, but I would tell you that we're doing a little bit more than, point and click, PowerPoint. There's no death by PowerPoint here. They have to get out one of our reserve ambulances, and we were lucky. We have 5 or 6 people in the community, including a couple of businesses that entertain our students in real life scenarios. We can't afford to, gazillion-dollar sim lab. So we have people that volunteer their houses or volunteer their businesses. There's one place in our fire district called the Billy Goat, which is a bar that has a famous Bloody Mary mix. So if you go to the Billy Goat website, you'll find it. And they entertain us over there for a bar fight. And
very nice.
so the students actually respond over there and they find an epidural hematoma that was hit in the head with a pool cue that is initially conscious and then goes unconscious. And it's a small enough bar that there's the usual suspects in there. And they're free to harass the EMS crew like they would in a regular bar fight. So, but the students kind of get a chance to go in there and figure out how to get the gurney around corners and assess a patient when it's loud and noisy. And it's that kind of high, it's a form of high fidelity simulation. But they appreciate that. And, the word gets out that we're doing fun stuff over here, or you're not just sitting watching a PowerPoint for 4 hours until your behind hurts. So,
right. Well, that sounds really exciting. So we're looking forward to your next 2 articles to come out. They'll be spaced out, every couple of weeks or so through our production schedule. But we very much appreciate your willingness to do this. The mentoring and the Jim Page Lighthouse Leadership Program is an exciting thing. I am looking forward to reading your articles and seeing the direction that's going, because I really think it's important for the profession to get these type of messages out. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, Ted, thanks for having me, and thanks to JEMS for kind of entertaining this 3-part series. And hopefully we get some great feedback on it. And the last thing I would say is that NEMT has the applications open right now to be a mentor. So if you feel you've got something to offer the younger generation, you're willing to make a commitment, we'd love to consider your application.
That'd be great. Yeah, actually, I've been mentoring throughout my career in education, and people say, "Oh, well, that's my teacher." I've had more than a few go, "No, he wasn't a teacher. He was a mentor," because they've gone on to med school or nurse practitioner school. I mean, I've got a couple people that have gone on to be directors of programs, director of services, in the flight realm as well. So it's quite a humbling thing when you look back and you see, somebody that you helped along their career path, and they did it. They were the ones that did all the hard work. But to play a small role, it's quite humbling to see them succeed like that.
It is. It's a great feeling, and it's noble work, as we would say.
Yeah, no, we'll work. Well, thank you very much. We look forward to your newest articles, and I will invite you back anytime you want for, more podcasts or webinars with JEMS. And once again, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ted.